Tonight, President Akufo-Addo has announced that receivers for defunct savings and loans companies as well as microfinance institutions will start another round of payments to depositors from Monday. The president disclosed this when he addressed Parliament during the State of the Nation address.
Mr. Speaker, we inherited a collapsing financial sector that has led to failing banks and considerable agony to many people. The government is having to conjure 13 billion cedis to pay the 4.6 million affected customers of the banks. This is money that we can ill afford and which would have gone to fund the many things that our communities are crying for. Properly utilized, 13 billion Ghana cedis would work wonders with our perennial infrastructure deficit. But we did think long and hard about paying all the customers of the failed banks, and we believe we made the right decision. I would like to repeat that all depositors of the savings and loans and microfinance institutions, including DKM, which collapsed in 2015, will receive 100% of their deposits too once the validation exercise is concluded. And I'm informed that the receiver of the savings and loans and microfinance institutions will begin on Monday, the 24th of February, making payments to their customers. These monies, totaling 5 billion cedis, being in addition to 13 billion cedis being paid to the customers of the failed banks. We hope that lessons have been learned, and this will serve as a healthy caution to those who are offered unrealistic interest rates on deposits. I do not think it will be possible to repeat this grand pay-up in another lifetime. I want to assure Ghanaians that we're going to hold those who have been responsible for these failures of financial institutions, the supervisors and management of these institutions, accountable.
Well, Deputy Finance Minister Kweku Kwatin says work has already begun on the processes to aid payment of depositors of defunct financial institutions. This follows an official request by the President for the ministry to take the necessary steps in clearing all the depositors. He tells Joy Business they are committed to ensuring that everyone is paid. There's more in this report. Government has taken it upon itself to settle all aggrieved customers of the various defunct financial institutions before the end of the year. Addressing Parliament on the State of the Nation, the President said 5 billion cedis will be used from next week to settle some depositors of microfinance institutions and savings and loans companies that have gone down. The idea behind this payment, according to Deputy Minister of Finance Kweku Kwatin, is to ensure that there is maximum confidence in the financial sector.
Well, as the President said, and as had been communicated to the Ministry of Finance earlier on by the President, the government's position is that government pays 100% of the value of what the depositors put in those failed financial institutions. As the Ministry of Finance, we are preparing to do this. We will comply with the dates he set, but essentially, we will do so after the validation has been completed. And the objective is to ensure that the stability of the financial services sector and the confidence people have in our financial services sector will be preserved. That is why government is pursuing this policy.
Mr. Kwatin also assured that funds have been provided for the payment, but additional funds will be raised where necessary.
Yes, there is space for this, but we would look at what gap will arise in terms of available resources for this particular expenditure and the real extent of the expenditure. We would look at the gap and see how we will fill it. But the important thing for depositors is that government has made a decision to pay everybody, all that they deposited with the failed financial institutions.
So far, government has disclosed that the cost of the financial sector cleanup is around 13 billion cedis. Ibn Sabotage report for Joy Business. Meanwhile, a member of the Finance Committee of Parliament, Daniel Ostem Abuaje, says the announcement has come as a relief. He noted that the issue has been of a major concern to the Finance Committee.
Fair that Ghanaians who deposited their money innocently, they paid all the monies that they deposited. In the past, there was this talk about paying some 10,000, 20,000 amount, and the president said, no, everybody that deposited their money should be paid. He made mention of some 5 billion being made available to begin to pay after the verification. So I think it's good news for everybody, and that is a president that really cares. And the whole thing is that if you look at every sector, of our economy, from microeconomic indicators and all the sectors, there are a lot of mess, including the financial sector.
Has it been a concern for the finance committee? I know you are on the committee. Has it been a concern for the?
Yeah, it has been a concern for the finance committee. That's why when it started, we actually invited the governor of Bank of Ghana and his team to come and appear before the committee for a hearing, which we did. And a lot of revelations came up, and the causes and why the previous government failed to take action. Because some of these issues were discovered through the banking audits. But unfortunately, no action were taken. Even in one instance where one action was taken was a situation where they gave over $600 million to, I think, Capital Bank, and they messed it up. They divided the money like it's on their own money. So basically, we are very concerned. We are happy that now Ghanaians are going to ultimately get their money, and the president said some action is going to begin very soon. But of course, people have been paid over the years, except that we have to expedite it to make sure that everybody is paid. So it's very, very good news, especially to hear it from the president's own mouth. It's good news.
Well, more reactions to the president's announcement. The Association of Savings and Loans Companies has described as adequate the amount provided for paying depositors of defunct institutions. According to the association, this may result in everyone receiving their funds. Cody Abacha is executive secretary.
If, of course, 5 billion is released to the public, and of course the customers receive these 5 billion cedis, it will help them to continue to do their business. It will help them resolve the other issues. There are a number of them who we are sure that they don't actually want to utilize their monies, and we want to encourage them to, when they receive their monies, come and bank with us, because we are far better today than yesterday. Again, it will also improve the liquidity position in the system. It will help people who are not paying their loans to also pay their loans. It will help people who are not saving to also save some elsewhere. And so we believe that the release of these funds is going to oil the whole system again to improve productivity. What we are interested in is the fact that anybody who has gone through the validation process receive his or her money. As to the quantum and all that, we can't verify, we can't confirm or disprove. And so we are happy that some money has been made available. And therefore we are expecting that customers will receive all their monies so that everybody will be happy doing business with any savings and loan company.
All right, so let's bring you more from the President's State of the Nation address. He has been touting the country's economic stability. All right, we'll bring that to you later on, but the President has been talking about the achievements in the agri sector as well.
Mr. Speaker, another good example of deliberate, well thought out policy, executed through hard work and commitment, that is generating dividends, is what we've done about food and agriculture in the past 3 years. It bears repeating that agriculture was very much in the doldrums when we came into office, with a growth rate of 2.9%. We introduced the program for planting for food and jobs, and set about to make agriculture an attractive profession. We invested resources, expertise, and time, and the results have been impressive and rewarding. Growth rate in 2016 was 6.1%, and this increased to 6.4% last year. Increased production and high yields of some foodstuffs like maize, rice, sorghum, groundnuts, soybean, cowpea, cassava, and plantain have led to a decrease in the wholesale prices in market centers in major food-producing areas. Furthermore, we're no longer importers of maize. We're reducing our dependence on rice imports and are now, in effect, net exporters of foodstuffs. Food prices are their lowest in decades. Mr. Speaker, I must provide some examples of what I mean by things not just happening by happenstance, but by deliberate and meticulous planning and competent execution. We recruited some 2,700 agricultural extension agents to give practical expertise on the farms. We're not yet at the United Nations recommended ratio of 1 extension officer to 500 farmers, but we're working to get there, and it is definitely a vast improvement on the decimated department we met on the assumption of office. With the support of Canada, 300 vehicles and 3,000 motor bicycles have been deployed around the country for ease of movement for those tasked to help the farmers. Once the foodstuffs are produced, we don't leave it to chance and risk not being able to sell and thereby discourage the farmers. The National Food and Buffer Stock Company, NAFCO, has been revitalized to enhance agricultural marketing and improve access to market. NAFCO is promoting institutional procurement of produce and sales.
We can bring you now what the president had to say about the state of our economy.
Mr. Speaker, in 3 years, we've reduced inflation to its lowest level, 7.8% in January 2020, since 1992. For the first time in over 40 years, we've had a fiscal deficit below 5% of GDP for 3 years in a row. For the first time in over 20 years, the balance of trade, that is the difference between our exports and imports, has been in surplus for 3 consecutive years. Our current account deficit is shrinking, interest rates are declining, and the average annual rate of depreciation of the cedi is at its lowest for any first-term government in the Fourth Republic. Our economic growth has rebounded to place Ghana among the fastest-growing economies in the world for 3 years in a row at an annual average of 7% GDP growth, up from 3.4% in 2016, the lowest in nearly 3 decades.
The president touting economic progress there. We'll have a conversation about that because Philip Namfori has joined me in the studio. He has been following the State of the Nation address today. We've not had you here in quite a while.
Yes.
So great to see you on this memorable day when the minority walked out of the president during the State of the Nation address. But let's begin with the banking sector because that was quite an issue government has had to deal with over the past few months, and the president talked about the lessons learned over time, and seems to give us a sense that we are out of the woods, sort of, if you pay close attention to him. I mean, the worst has happened and we are moving on.
Yeah, so Darryl, thanks very much. And following from what the president said, particularly on the banking sector reforms, you see that is more or less a rehash of what has transpired since the Bank of Ghana effected its cleanup in the sector. What I gleaned from the president's speech at the State of the Nation address was the issue he mentioned about us not going back to such things. And I paraphrase what he said here, and then I wrote in my notes, President speaks about hoping lessons have been learned, and this will serve as a healthy caution to those who are offered unrealistic interest rates on deposits. And this brings up the issue of financial literacy.
Right.
And I know some time ago on Business Live, there was a discussion about financial literacy. A group had presented a petition to the Ministry of Finance asking that we revamp the national finance literacy agenda. I think we should take a look at that and see how best we can allow financial literacy at the top to percolate down to the lower end of the market and let everybody, particularly those who are most affected, understand. And for this literacy issue, it cannot affect greed. let's differentiate between the two. If you don't know anything about financial services, you are easily duped. But we have those who know and are greedy. And these are some of the people that the President were mentioning here. We are chasing high interest rates on deposits. If an institution is offering you high interest rates on deposits, there are concomitant effects on the loans it gives out because they have to correspond and they have to make their spread from the difference between deposits and lending rates. So for me, I think this was very important, but we need to ramp it up, the financial literacy.
Right, and thankfully there have been reforms in place, and I should think that the banks are complying with the reforms introduced by the central bank, and that leads us to the outcome of financial sector cleanup, because you saw some microfinance institutions go down, some savings and loans companies go down, and we have had to pay some of the depositors. There are a number of people that have not been settled, and now we heard the president talk about a 5 billion cedi fund that government was going to advance for the payment of depositors. Your thoughts?
Okay, Darryl, I hate to disagree with you, but I have to disagree with you here. If I remember, I didn't hear the president saying it was a fund. I didn't hear him saying we are going to advance.
Money is that
money will be made available.
Right?
Yes,
that's right.
To pay these depositors. We can assume, or we can do some hypothesizing or some guessing that obviously some funds will be advanced to the receiver for it to make the payments to these affected people, and then as time goes on through the receivership process, they sell the assets, etc., of these affected institutions, and then there will be an offset at some point. The issue raises two angles. We have one, making people whole, and two, concern about our debt, because you see that the banking sector cleanup has significantly added to the debt stock of the country. Right. So we have to balance the two. And I think the president even mentioned that if these funds were available for our infrastructure projects or plugging our fiscal deficits, it would have been good. But he again feels like this was the best decision they had to take.
Do we know where this money is coming from?
I will assume it's from within our coffers, right? Because we've issued bonds. We have external bonds. We have our domestic debt securities that we raise here. So I would assume it's coming from here. But we only ask that, like the governor also said some time ago, and we've seen some progress in there. The receivership process should be sped up. But there are also some impediments in there which they must also overcome. But all in all, we hope that this can be completed in some good time.
Already we are told that government has pumped some 13 billion cedis into paying these depositors.
We are the banking sector.
Yeah, and we are seeing another 5 billion cedis, right? So how much is too much, really?
Darryl, when it comes to financial sector, I remember discussing with you the Benny Madoff case, and till date, some of the victims of the Benny Madoff scandal, this scandal happened in the US, are still being made whole. It's stretched a long time. The effects of financial sector malaise will spread its tentacles all across. So we must ensure that we don't come back here for us, you and I, probably in our 50s, 60s, discussing another financial sector issue. For me, I think that would be the best thing.
You think they are under pressure to settle these depositors because we are in the election
because of political reasons?
And they may want to seem as though they're thinking about the depositors and they're applied at the moment.
I will not rule that out in terms of the political pressures that come in an election year, but we must make sure that this is done and doesn't affect ultimately the Fiscal Responsibility Act that we've passed, ensuring that our deficit is capped at 5%. But again, the paramount thing is making individuals whole, because these are where people are receiving their pension payments and whole lot of things. It's terrible to see a mom, dad, son, daughter going through something because of the ignorance of somebody who couldn't run his institution well or something of that sort.
Let's talk about the state of our economy at the end of the day. And I just want our audience to take a look at the poll we've been running tonight, asking you if our nation is in good health and if it is in competent hands as far as the economy is concerned. We've got 1,400 of you voting. That's quite a huge number who are interested in speaking out. And look at the results, Philip. 87% say no, they don't think that the economy is in good hands. They don't think that we are in good health as a country. Are you surprised by what you say?
No, these are the people of Ghana speaking. You may argue that 1,400 may not be a significant or adequate representation of the population. But I believe these are the people of Ghana following our Joy Business page, and they are speaking. we must listen to them. They are the ones in charge of putting people in power, and even listening to us or watching us. They run the show ultimately. So I think let's.
I mean, the poll has been on for 4 hours, so we have 20 more hours to go. So it'll be interesting to see the outcome. But don't you think this is unfair to government? Seeing that there was this Bloomberg article recently that was talking about, you know, the kind of maybe boom we have seen over the years. That is unfair to government.
Yeah, Darryl, if you look at the macro numbers, we are in a good shape. If you look at exchange rates, inflation, GDP growth rate, and referencing the Bloomberg story, which says Ghana is in a better place to more or less kickstart the advancement of the West African region, as Japan did in the Asian Pacific region. So you realize that, yes, good things have been made, all right, on the numbers. When I look at the data, I look at stuff, but there are other things that come into play when you're running an economy. It goes just beyond the macro numbers. We are here discussing the business and the macro side of things. There are a lot of political, social factors, cultural factors that feed into this. And perhaps maybe people are looking at that. People have been affected in some way we may not be privy to. So all these are things that are going back. In terms of the numbers and where Ghana sits in the international space, we are doing excellently.
And my producer points out to me, it's all about the trickle-down effect, right? People not feeling the impact of the numbers.
So if the people don't feel it and you're doing a big, they're having fun.
We're just about wrapping up. So, I mean, your verdict on the State of the Nation address, as far as the economy is concerned, are you satisfied with what you heard from the president?
Like I said, I like to follow numbers. And for me, these things are more or less like a re-emphasis. I hear them all the time. For me, the only new thing here, and this is just broad, I'm just taking one part out. We've heard the bonds issue before. I've read the Bloomberg story. I've discussed it on Marketplace before. Was the payment of the depositors of the MFIs and the SNLs from next week, Monday, in terms of new information to me. But in terms of all these things, there are things that we regularly discuss. When the reports come out, we discuss them, we do reports about them. So I follow them, I keep track of them. So for me, I think it was just, it's normal for me. But we saw the display of seniority and seniors and stuff like that, and minority working out.
Seniors?
Yeah. That feeds into order, but in terms of it, I think it was okay.
Thank you very much, Philip Namfori, for your analysis as always. Reminder that you can go to our Facebook wall just so you can partake in our poll tonight, asking if indeed nation is in good health and in good hands, as the president has said today in Parliament. My name is Darryl Kwao. Thanks for watching. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. Get up to date on all the day's other stories, including our big story tonight: receiver to pay customers of defunct microfinance savings and loans companies. Monday, of course, that from the State of the Nation address, myjoyonline.com/business. My name is Darryl Kwao. I'll be back same time tomorrow.